the Ninth Circuit rep in over a decade and a half, but thank you for those kind words. Tim, thank you for inviting me. I just really enjoy doing this kind of presentation because I think it is so helpful. I've had a number of lawyers tell me that that these kinds of presentations, this kind of technique has been very effective. And so if you have a computer or a smartphone, you can log on to OccuCollect.com and create a free account. Just put in your name and your email address and then enter, and then go redeem it in the profile section. The code is training. You need your own unique password, a secret question so you can retrieve your account anytime. So do it on the second screen, you can do it on a phone, OccuCollect.com. So there we go. All right, so the step 5 and frequently step 4 question is whether work exists, and the agency takes administrative notice of reliable job information available from various governmental and other publications. That is the administrative notice regulation. It isn't the DOT alone, it is the DOT. And the critical word is in the statute is exists in 423D2, and the word exist in the present tense is in the regulation. It isn't existed. Of the 13,000 DOT codes, 10,000 of them have a date last updated of 1977. So it's been 43 years since most of our codes were updated. When an ALJ says, well, we only use the DOT and the SEO, you can always respond that that isn't true. That's not what the regulation says. The regulation says reliable job information from government resources, and that's the basis for our pitch. The DOT is one of the examples. The word is for example, we will take notice of. And because the sentence is for example, it isn't an exhaustive list. It is an example list. The DOT is on the list, so is the Occupational Outlook Handbook at number 5, so is County Business Patterns at number 2. 004P says we rely primarily on the DOT and SEO for information about the requirements of work. That is rulemaking without notice and comment. It is not an appropriate construction of the regulation. It is a stretch at best, and I would love to have the right case to test the deference doctrine announced in Kaiser on 004P, that in 8310. There's the statute. 5 times the word exists appears in the statutory language. Substantial gainful activity work which exists, whether such work exists, without regard to whether a specific vacancy exists. Work which exists in the national economy means work which exists in significant numbers. It's the present tense. The past tense, what happened in 1977, is totally irrelevant. We have cases in the 7th Circuit where you are, in the 9th Circuit where I am. Cross-examination is hard. Get over it. That's why you get paid the big bucks. You can do this on the fly. You can do this with your phone. You can do this with your internet-connected tablet or laptop. And in this COVID environment, when we're at our offices, you can put it up on a second screen right next to your exhibit file and your notes. The vocational expert doesn't have to cooperate. We saw this in the BSTIC case. We see this in Ford. We see this in Bayless. The agency is under no obligation, because it's under no obligation to lay a foundation for vocational expert testimony, the agency won't, which means that you must. And the question that you ask to establish a foundation is, how do you know that? The Supreme Court in BSTIC said that it's a fair question to ask for the reliable methodology for extrapolating your local experience to the national economy. local experience is the polite way of saying your anecdotal experience. That's all vocational experts have, is an anecdotal experience. Any vocational expert that thinks that they have more statistical data upon which to describe the national economy than the Department of Labor is delusional. The vocational expert doesn't even have to understand what they're reading. That's what Purdy out of the First Circuit, written by Justice Souter, sitting by designation. The vocational expert didn't know how Job Browser Pro worked, but was able to testify without contradiction that Job Browser Pro is reliable. So we're going to use Job Browser Pro. But the vocational expert does have to explain themselves rationally. In Chavez, Seventh Circuit case for you, directly applicable, cited in BSTEC, use it vigorously. The vocational expert said, well, I don't like Job Browser Pro. I like the Occupational Employment Quarterly because the Occupational Employment Quarterly gives me bigger job numbers. That's not a rational basis for selecting the Occupational Employment Quarterly, which a number of cases in the Seventh Circuit have described as statistical trash. That's my word, not theirs. Two cases out of the Ninth Circuit, Shaibi and Meenal, separated by almost 20 years in time, and they have one thing in common. They have two things in common. First, they both found either waiver or forfeiture of the vocational issues during the administrative process. The other thing that they have in common is they're both my cases, trying to fix other people's mistakes. There must be, if the evidence is presented to the ALJ has a duty to explain how they divided and conquered the evidence. If the evidence is presented to the Appeals Council, there just has to be substantial evidence for the ALJ to rely upon. Obviously, the better tactic is to get the evidence into the ALJ post-hearing. Every time the 5-day rule does not apply to rebuttal evidence. The 5-day rule applies to affirmative evidence. So if you're surprised at the vocational expert's testimony, and I promise you that you are surprised at the vocational expert's testimony, either negatively or positively every single time, you have the opportunity to take advantage of the opportunity of submitting a post-hearing brief and post-hearing data dump. And I use the phrase data dump intentionally because it ends up with 3 or 4 occupations. You end up with a 200-page document. Here's what the Department of Labor says about the DOT, and this is at the Department of Labor publication of the DOT. The ONET is now the primary source for occupational information. It is sponsored by the ETA through a grant to the North Carolina Department of Commerce. Thus, if you are looking for current occupational information, you should use the ONET. The bold-faced emphasis that thus, if you're looking for current occupational information, you should use the ONET, that's not mine. That's Emphasis Original, and that's at that website. So I have that bookmarked. I use the Department of Labor version of the DOT every day. The Social Security Administration is developing the Occupational Information Network or System OIS because the DOT is hopelessly out of date. 10,000 out of 13,000 occupations were last updated in 1977. It is not substantial evidence if it's contradicted, which is our job. The Occupational Requirement Survey is part of the OIS. The Labor is frantically trying to develop the ORS. It's now come out in 4 iterations, 2016, 2017, 2018, and 2019, published in May of this year. We're currently using the 2019 version of the ORS, except where the data is missing, we use the 2018. We're going to take a look at that. All right, so I addressed marker and cashier 2 in a session about this process in June, and that's available on YouTube, and you can watch that anytime you want. OccuCollect has a page. If you want to go back to this presentation to see how we addressed the occupations that we're going to look at today, that will also be up on YouTube. I'm not sure if my son can make the videos available on OccuCollect.com, but they will definitely be available on YouTube for you to consult with at any time. Okay, so a vocational expert says that the occupation of egg processor is a sedentary, unskilled, simple job, 6 hours of sitting in an 8-hour day, and there's 240,000 jobs. And I wish we had audio feedback, but I know that we're on a delay, and if I look behind me on my screen behind me, I would know that you're about 15 seconds behind me. But if you think that if you wouldn't challenge that, then you're missing a case. There are no sedentary, simple, repetitive task jobs in the national economy, period. They just aren't there anymore. All right, so let's go ahead and look at OccuCollect. So I've already logged in. Over here in the profile is where you would enter your password and your secret word, secret question. And so if you just sign up for OccuCollect, you get the DOT summary report. And so if I click on that and type in egg processor, and so you can look at the characteristics of this occupation, the industry, the strength, the SVP, everything, including the data, people, things codes, which are sometimes important, not for this particular occupation, but sometimes. And it includes the temperaments, the MPSMS codes and work field codes, and both the 2010 SOC number and the 2018 SOC number. We are now in process of converting to the 2018 SOC. The ONET will convert to the 2018 SOC in November. The ORS, the OOH, and the Occupational Employment Statistics, the OES, have already converted to the 2018 SOC. So pretty soon we'll be caught up. You can get a DOT crosswalk, which is helpful if you want to look at the occupations. So if you're watching, then you know that production workers all other is the code for egg processor. And this will tell you exactly how many DOT codes. If we go all the way down to the bottom. Oh, it's not sharing the OccuCollect. Is anybody seeing? Scott, can you tell me if we're getting the OccuCollect screen?
We're not, Larry. Scott said that was on your end. Is there a screen share button or the like?
All right. Thought I was. All right. I'm going to stop share. I'm going to share screen, and I'm going to go back to that one and share. Can you see it now?
Yes. We see it now.
Yep, here we're good.
So you can, all right. All right, so this is the, I know what I did. Apparently you're not allowed to do what I thought I could do on, there we go. All right, so this is the DOT crosswalk. Here's the DOT summary sheet that I was referencing that you couldn't see. In this box, you would type in egg processor or the DOT code. I would select that, hit submit. This is the summary sheet. Yeah. And then the crosswalk report, if you, I'm not going to do it again, but if you just type in 519199 or production workers, all other, you would get that this is a huge occupational group. It is the largest occupational group, 1,590 DOT codes. There are 137 sedentary unskilled, 52 of them are here. 405 of the light unskilled occupations are in this group. None of these occupations have very many jobs. If they did, they'd be in their own SOC code. They wouldn't be alongside 1,590 SOC codes. Okay. You get the OOH for free, you get the OES for free, you get all those stuff for free. And then basic reports with all of the definitions are here. And then we've developed some custom reports down here at the bottom, and down here is the 2018 everything report. And we're going to use that report because the 2019 data set does not have the data for this particular occupational group. It's under revision, and so there it is. So here's an everything report. The everything report starts off with the full DOT code, including the industry designation here. The narrative is there, the GOE, the trailer information is there, SVP, all defined, data, people, things. Unskilled work is predominantly with things rather than data or people. That's in Social Security ruling 8515. So if you have significant data or people functions, it might be unskilled, but it probably isn't simple. This occupation is generically simple. It is reasoning level 2, and it is focused on things. The only significant worker functions are in handling objects. We have the SCO, and that's not helpful for this particular occupation. We also have the Occupational Outlook Handbook. So this is production workers, all other. An individual limit, these are the typical requirements, as you can see in this box right here. The typical entry-level education requirements are for a high school diploma or equivalent. The typical on-the-job training requirement is moderate term. Moderate term is a Department of Labor description. Moderate term means more than 30 days and up to 1 year. So typically, production workers, all other, are semi-skilled or skilled. In the aggregate, production workers represent 244,700 jobs in the national economy. The ONET does not address in detail production workers, all other. Every occupational group called all other that ends in a 9, that's what 9 means. It means the terminal digit of 9 means all other, is not addressed because they're too varied. We do have our summary of what the crosswalk shows, that there are 52 SVP1 and 50 SVP2 occupations. All right. And then we have the complete regurgitation of the ORS data. And so what I want to do is I want to scroll all the way down to the bottom, whoops, of this page. And here's a summary that OccuCollect provides so that we can just take a quick glance and figure out where we're going with this occupation. So we're looking at a sedentary, simple, repetitive work. And according to this bottom box, 53% of occupations that are production workers, all other, are unskilled, SVP2. So instead of dealing with 129,000 jobs, or 244,000 jobs as our base number, we're now down to 129,691. The maximum lifted and carried at the mean, the average is 27.2 pounds. And at the 75th percentile, it's 38.38 pounds. Both of those measures are descriptive of medium work. Maximum lifted and carried is described here in this next box up, strength calculations. We see that almost 64% of the jobs require medium work. Now, logically, we could ask the question of whether an unskilled occupation is more likely to require greater exertion or lesser exertion. And it isn't for us to figure that out. It's for the vocational expert to articulate. I'm going to scroll up here because there's no ONET data for this occupational group. We're going to go all the way up to standing and walking. So we have right here in the middle of the screen, at the mean, on the average, production workers all over on their feet 85.7% of the day. 85.7 times 8 hours is more than 6 hours in an 8-hour day. Light work that's required that's limited to 6 hours of standing and walking cannot perform the typical functions of a production worker. At the 25th percentile, production workers are on their feet 87.5% of the day. There is no statistical basis for assuming that production workers engage in sedentary work. There's none. It just doesn't happen. And so the vocational expert's testimony, let's see, I have to go back, share screen. Now I know what I'm doing. And we're going to go back to this one. All right, share. So the vocational expert's testimony that there are 240,000 jobs in the national economy is clearly wrong. It's not sustainable. The vocational expert has used old data, the 2018 SOC data, and used the entire occupational group to identify job numbers. It's wrong. As we saw, the DOT describes the occupation of egg processor as working in the pharmaceutical and related products industry. People that are allergic to eggs know that they have to be very careful in getting vaccines because most vaccines use eggs to grow the vaccine. So that's in the DOT parenthetical statement. You can go to the industry designation section of the DOT that's available online to the Department of Labor website to get that information. And so we know that it's production workers all other, 1,590 DOT codes at all exertion and skill levels, and that in 2018, we're talking about 244,700 jobs. And so that's the information from the Occupational Handbook that we described. That's the information from the ORS that we just went through looking at our Occu Collect calculator sheet. And the last line on this page, there is no report of standing or walking that fits the definition of sedentary work. And so what does Job Browser Pro say? I'm not replicating Job Browser Pro's screenshots because it's their proprietary information. And so if you don't have Job Browser Pro and you want to cross-examine vocational experts, you need to buy Job Browser Pro. It's like $500 for the first year, and it's $149 after that. Buy it. If you win one case a year, you've more than made back your money. Just buy it. So Job Browser Pro says that there are, the egg processor belongs to the occupational group 519199. That's production workers all other. Job Browser Pro assigns egg processor to the pharmaceutical medicine manufacturing group. That's NAICS, North American Industry Classification System. That's the agreed upon classification system between the United States, Canada, and Mexico that grew out of NAFTA. And the code is 325400. A 2-digit NAICS is a sector, a 3-digit NAICS is a subsector, a 4-digit NAICS is an industry group, and a 5-digit NAICS is an industry, a specific industry. And in the United States, we insist on being different and having more information. So we go all the way down to 6 digits, which is even more specific industry designation. At the Occupational group 519199 and the NAICS 325400, there are 1,592 jobs. But egg processor isn't the only production worker occupation that exists in that industry. And so Job Browser Pro says there are 69 jobs in that group. 69. That is conflicting evidence that the ALJ will have to deal with. And the beauty of submitting Job Browser Pro in response to vocational expert testimony in this case of 240,000 jobs is that it creates what it was not but is now an apparent conflict with the DOT. Egg processors don't exist in all industries. Egg processors exist in the pharmaceutical industry. And so the vocational expert's testimony that there are 240,000 jobs ignores the industry designation. The occupational employment statistics says that there are 222,230 jobs in the nation in 2019, that in the entire manufacturing sector, which is 31 through 33 as the industry sector designation, 91,940 jobs. So any manufacturing job that within this group has to be less than 91,000 jobs. Within the chemical manufacturing subsector, the 3 digits, 7,530 jobs, and within the pharmaceutical medicine manufacturing industry group, again, 325400, there's 1,333 jobs. So actually, when Job Browser Pro says there's 1,592 at the industry intersection, Job Browser Pro is actually overestimating the number of jobs in the in this. So we're good. Let's go back to our Occu Collect, share, and we're going to go back to reports. And then one of the free reports, the last free report here is the OES report for 2019. And did I do the screen switch properly? I'm going to assume that I did. So there we're going to type in 51-9199. We're going to select production workers, all other. We're going to tap on submit. And so this is an OES report. And when we devised this report, we put the total number of jobs at the bottom. So here's the cross-industry total at the bottom, 222,230 jobs. That's the total number of jobs for almost 1,600 occupations. If I hit Control F and type chemical, because that was the industry subsector, we see that there's 7,530 jobs. And this line down here, 325400, 1,330 jobs. And so not only have we supported Job Browser Pro's estimate that contradicts the vocational expert, we've supported it with published governmental data that actually tightens up the contradiction and makes the vocational expert's testimony not substantial evidence. Anybody that's still convinced that there are over 200,000 egg processors in the country, I don't know what to say about them. They obviously aren't paying attention. So, all right. So let's go back to our PowerPoint and share. There we go. Our next occupation is Almond, Blancher, Hand, and so this is 521-687-010. Again, sedentary, unskilled, reasoning level 1, so simple 1 and 2 step instructions. This is in the occupational group of 519198, helpers, production workers. There's the DOT crosswalk for this particular occupation. And the vocational expert said there were 320,000 jobs. So let's go ahead and examine what our data says. The DOT says that Hand, Almond, Blancher exists in the canning and preserving industry. It's a food-related occupation. The ONET Online says that there are 553 DOT codes at all exertion and skill levels, and that the 2018 employment is 354,600 jobs. The vocational expert has once again approximated the entire OES group for 553 DOT codes and asked us to believe her that all of those jobs are sedentary hand almond blancher jobs. The Occupational Outlook Handbook agrees that it's short-term on-the-job training, so it is unskilled, and there are 304,000 jobs in the nation as of 2019. This would be the data that was released in September of this year. And the summary is that 53% of the jobs are unskilled. Medium work is 49.2% of jobs. They lift and carry 15 pounds maximum at the 10th percentile. They're on their feet 6 hours a day at the 10th percentile. And once again, we have no report of lifting, carrying, or standing and walking that fits the sedentary definition for hand almond blancher. So I want to go ahead and look at that. And there we go. So I'm going to go to reports. And I'm going to go back to the 2018 data set. I'm going to type in Almond, Blancher, and there it is. I'm going to select that. I'm going to hit submit. And again, we have all of our DOT. We have all of our SCO information. And we have the Occupational Outlook Handbook. All of these data points are, where applicable, are hyperlinked to outside sources, to government websites. So it's self-confirming. The work context report, if we had a social limitation to occasional contact with others, for instance, we can see here that 17% of helpers have occasional contact with others. The rest of them have more than occasional contact with others. So an exertional limitation coupled with a social limitation would significantly impact the occupational base. One of the other pieces of data that's here is very helpful with people with mental impairments is work with a group or team. So if you have a no teamwork limitation, 8% of jobs, teamwork is not important. So that's a huge, huge limitation on the ability to work. Not for this occupation, but for some occupations, the existence of part-time work is important. And so we see that 6% of occupations have a typical work week of less than 40 hours. Part-time work does not count ever at step 5 of the sequential evaluation process. It doesn't count, not at step 5. If your past work is part-time and you can still perform your past part-time work, you're not disabled. But if you can perform 7.5 hours of work in an 8-hour day, you're not able to engage in SGA as defined by Social Security ruling 96-8P. Okay, so then we have our, scroll down. We have our education training report. And then we have the ORS report. And here we have literacy, minimum education required. So helpers don't typically, are described typically as having a high school education, but we see that 48.9% of these jobs actually require less than a high school education. For an individual, a marginal education, we have some work to do, but it's clearly an erosive factor. And again, we have our OccuCollect calculator information at the bottom of this. We have the standing and walking in hours. We have the standing and walking as a percentage of the day. We have the sitting requirements. So the 75th percentile, helpers get to sit down 12.5% of the workday. That's it. We have manipulation described. We have the ONET contact with others described. We have the lifting and carrying described, and here we have that summary here of lifting and carrying 15 pounds at the 10th percentile. And we have the SVP that's actually reported. So there is no statistical basis for a sedentary occupation in helpers at all, not ever. Okay, let's go back to our report. Job Browser Pro says that there assigns Hand, Almond, Blancher to two different industries: fruit and vegetable preserving and specialty food manufacturing, and other food manufacturing. And that at that intersection, those two intersections combined, there's 5,455 jobs, and estimates that 351 of them are Hand, Almond, Blancher. That's it. We started with over 300,000 and now we're down to 351. We've created conflict. We've created conflict with a reliable published, privately published publication. And we're going to go back to our employment statistics to see if Job Browser Pro is right. According to this summary, Job Browser Pro is underestimated because there should be something in the neighborhood of 9,000 jobs in these two industries that are helpers, and Job Browser Pro is estimated 5,455. So even if you double Job Browser Pro's 351 job estimate to 700, you're not even in a significant number of jobs, regardless of exertion, in the Sixth Circuit. But every other circuit, 351 or 700 jobs is in the nation is not a significant number of jobs. And so if I go back to my OccuCollect and I click on this reports over on the far left, and I can also right click or double click with my pad on my laptop here, and I can create a new tab with OccuClick. So I can actually run 3, 4, 5, 10 OccuClick screens for different views all day long. So I do that all the time. 9198, this is the OES data. And so this is going to confirm the Job Browser Pro, give a statistical basis for Job Browser Pro statements. 303,000 jobs in the nation. Other food, whoops, gotta type food properly. So fruit and vegetable manufacturing is up here at 3,114 and 5,590 jobs. And other food manufacturing is on 3,119, and that's 3,590 jobs. So we've supported our friends at Job Browser Pro on this particular occupation, not necessarily every occupation. Sometimes Job Browser Pro is just wrong, but that's a different problem. That's a different presentation. Okay, stuffer. This is the last one we're going to do, and I know we have about 20 minutes. And if you have any questions, please submit them, and so that the moderator can forward them to me. I would love to hear what your questions are. Tim, if you have any questions now, you can go ahead and pipe right in. So stuffer, sedentary, unskilled, reasoning level 2, belongs to packaging and filling machine operators. Vocational expert says 400,000 jobs as a stuffer. The DOT says that it's in the toys, games, and sports equipment industry. That's from the DOT parenthetical statement, and from the occupational titles arranged by industry designation in the DOT itself. The ONET Online says that that there are 74 DOT codes, and then the entire occupational group is 394,000 jobs. The OH says that this is a high school diploma required typically, and short-term on-the-job training, so typically unskilled, 304,000 jobs in 2019. Different year, different report. The ORS says that almost 64% of these jobs are unskilled. They lift and carry 20 pounds maximum at the 10th percentile. They're on their feet 95% of the day at the 25th percentile. There's no statistical data that supports the continued existence of sedentary, unskilled packaging and filling machine operators and tender jobs, not stuffers, not otherwise. So if we go up back to our Occu Collect, and we can use our other screen because we created a new screen, and click on our 2019 report because this occupation is actually described, and there it is at the top, stuffer 519111, and click on it. And again, we have all the same information we had before, DOT, SCO, and I'm going to just go down to contact with others. We see that if this was an occasional contact with others, because they're running a filling machine, a packaging and filling machine, 4% of the jobs have occasional contact with others or less. Group or team, 1% of jobs do not involve teamwork. Very few jobs do not involve teamwork. If you don't get a passing grade and plays well with others in elementary school, you have serious problems. That child is going to have serious problems his or her entire life. It's typically boys that have those kinds of problems, but it's a very serious problem for people that are not socialized properly or lose the ability to be socialized properly due to schizophrenia or mental illness, alcohol, drug abuse, whatever it is, it's bad. I can search for SVP and I can see how the codes are separated here. I can see that the ORS says that 63.6% of the jobs are in fact unskilled. I come down to our summary sheet at the bottom, and this has the data reports from the actual data that's on the pages before, and it says at the 25th percentile, filling machine operators are on their feet 7.6 hours per day, which is 95% of the day. They're lifting and carrying maximum 20 pounds at the 10th percentile. These jobs are not sedentary. They're just not sedentary. So let's go back, do a new share, boom. I figured this out, I'm so happy. Job Browser Pro says that Stuffer represents 195 jobs at the other miscellaneous manufacturing code. We started with 400,000, now we're down to 195. Created conflict, the ALJ is going to have to deal with the conflict. We can submit the OES reports that says that there are more likely 7,390 miscellaneous manufacturing jobs, or 2,000 other miscellaneous manufacturing jobs, 5,300. So let's take a look at the OES report. I'm going to type in filling machine operators and tenders. We want the one that doesn't end in a 0 because the 0 means it's a summary and it may not be the one we want. And so when we scroll down to the bottom of this page, there we see 390,540 jobs as the cross-industry total. If we type in Control F, miscellaneous manufacturing, we get 5,390 jobs. 2 lines down, other miscellaneous manufacturing is 2,000 jobs. And so you never count both of those. You count the one that applies. Toy manufacturing is a specific industry that is a subset of 3399. So if you search for the NAICS manual and go to the Census Bureau, there's the NAICS manual. Just a Google search. You can download it. It's 7.3 megabytes, and you can actually peruse through yourself. It's 400 or 500 pages long, so it's actually quite an endeavor. So there we go. Oops. New share. There we go. Boom. Okay. Whoops.
Okay, I think we have some questions, Larry, if you're
Great.
ready.
Hit me. Yeah.
One is just the logistics of this. Are you able to, during the course of a hearing, able to go through this analysis that you've just shown us, or is this something that you end up doing post-hearing?
The answer to that question is yes. I will frequently, either if I have an internet connection at the hearing office, or definitely if I'm doing a hearing in my own office here at work, I will pull it up and just kind of get a feel for some of the data. And so I will look at the entire OES group. And so a quick check for these three occupations would tell me that the vocational expert has identified the entire OES group. So I would ask them, did you identify the job numbers for the entire group, or just for this DOT specific occupation? Oh, I just use the OES groups. Like, well, how many DOT codes are in that group? Are they all sedentary and unskilled? And so I would ask that kind of question, and I would ask them if they have an occasional contact, something that's quick, that's not a 5 moving parts hypothetical question. I might ask more specific questions, but I would ask, are you familiar with the ONET online? Well, we're told not to use the ONET online. Who told you that? Who told you not to use the ONET? Well, that's my understanding. It's like, well, you're allowed to, I'm going to make an offer of proof. The judge can correct me if I'm wrong. The agency takes administrative notice of all kinds of data, including the ONET online. The DOT is the primary, but not the only resource. We know that because we allow you to testify. And so I'm going to establish that the ONET is reliable, that it's used for other purposes. I'm going to establish that that it replaced the DOT as far as labor is concerned in 1997, that it's now in its 25th major iteration. We're in version 25.1. That's the data that's up on OccuCollect right now. We're looking forward to a new data dump in November. There will be version 20.26.0. How many iterations of the DOT have there been since 1991? 0. It's the only one there. That's the last one. So I do a little bit of both. It depends on how I feel. Depends on how long the hearing is gone. I might want to lay a foundation for at least one of the occupations that the VE doesn't know what they're talking about. But I'm definitely going to ask them, how do you know that? What is your statistical basis for giving the information that you have? Well, I have 30 years of experience. I understand you have 30 years of experience. I'm asking you not for your experiential basis. I'm asking for your statistical basis. Do you have a statistical basis? Yes or no? Describe for me your methodology for arriving at job numbers. Well, I put them into a hat and I swirl it around and I pour it out, and whatever flavor that is, that's my job number. That's basically what the vocational expert said in Brace, which is a recent 7th Circuit case. It was just completely unilluminating. I felt like reading that decision, I felt like I was watching Charlie Brown and I was 8 years old again. Wah, 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 wah. It's just completely worthless. So, yeah, it depends on how you feel. We all fly by the seat of our pants. I'm definitely going to do a data dump after the hearing, even if I do get into it with the vocational expert. And I try to get into it so that the judge knows that I don't accept their testimony.
When you do it after the hearing, what does that look like? Do you send them an Occu Collect report? Do you write a letter referring to Occu Collect or to ORS, or what does that look like?
I have a letter. It cites BSTIC, it cites Shaibi, it cites Brace, it cites Good, this summer's case out of the 11th Circuit. And then I just summarize the data as I did on those screens in a narrative fashion. And I submit all of the data from the Occu Collect. I just print it out. I don't cite Occu Collect. Occu Collect is not the citation source. The ORS is the citation, the ONET is the citation, the OOH is the citation, the DOT is the citation, the OES is the citation, because it's an attorney from the government said, well, how do we know that data is true? It's like, well, it's all readily available. You can check me anytime you want, and I have a reputation to protect. And I'm not going to waste it by lying in publicly available data and have somebody check and say, oh yeah, your data is completely off. You're just nothing but a fraud. I'm not doing that.
Have you had any, when you've submitted something like that post-hearing, but pre-decision obviously, any kind of negative feedback by an ALJ?
The most common response will be, you're not a vocational expert, so you don't know what you're talking about. And the retort to that is that the administrative preference is administrative notice. That's paragraph D. The fallback, if it's too complicated to figure out with administrative notice, then we use the vocational expert to refine the administrative notice into something that is digestible. But it isn't the vocational expert's job to rebut statistical data. And so I do a lot of remand cases, I do a lot of court cases, and I've come back to ALJs and I've done a pre-hearing. This is what the vocational expert said at the last hearing. Prior counsel waived it, but I'm going to resuscitate, I'm going to give CPR to that issue. I'm going to breathe into it. I'm going to bring it back to life. And here's what I think the data shows about jobs. And I've had several ALJs this year say to me, I agree with your analysis. We just need the vocational expert to say that it's right. And then we won't take any more testimony. We'll just grant the case.
Okay. On a case that you have not had at the hearing level, but now you get it for the first time at the appeals council level or for the first time at the district court level, and this analysis hasn't been made yet. There's no evidence of these numbers. How has that gone? Have you tried to get it in at those points?
I have been submitting it to the appeals council for quite some time. We've run into some 5-day evidence problems. The argument for that is the 5-day evidence rule does not apply to rebuttal evidence, and there's no cutoff for rebuttal evidence before the appeals council. So I've been getting the evidence into the appeals council, mixed results in district court on review of those. If it's not in the record before it gets to federal court, Shaibi says we're done. So I no longer try to submit it into the federal courts. If I don't get the case at the appeals council level and I see that there was, 300,000 lens inserters, 200,000 lens inserters. That is so wrong. County business pattern says that lens inserter, the optical goods manufacturing industry is 25,000 jobs. Lens inserter is not most of them. That's just ridiculous. So I will tell the referral source or prior counsel, if the person comes to me independent of a referral source, look, you got to get this rebuttal evidence in. Read Shaibi. It's required. You have to do this.
Okay. With BSTEC, or however we pronounce that, Any more comments on that? I think there was, you know, the appellants lost, but all was not lost for the rest of us, I think.
Fred Daly lost, basic, but the bar won. We won because we got really good rules about what to do, and now we know what not to do. The game is not gotcha. The game is not, oh, you violated McKinney, and so I gotcha. That's not the way it goes. That's not how lawyers play their game. Lawyers present evidence, and so we always have to have conflict. If there had been just minimal conflict, an OOH or an OES report or anything at all, we already have 3 votes from the Supreme Court that says this is ridiculous. We just needed 2 more people to like, yeah, it is. This is untenable. This evidence is absurd. The testimony in BSTIC is absurd on its face. I would love to have a presentation with that vocational expert and have her defend herself, defend those job numbers because they're indefensible. BSTIC is a win, and Brace, Good, Chavez. There's some really good cases developing out there where the courts are saying, oh my God, we've been snookered for decades. It has to stop. I get chills just thinking about how exciting this is to really make an impact. I don't mind if my client loses, if they lose on the truth. But I will not sit there and let my client be denied benefits that they qualify for on a lie. That just rubs me the wrong way. That is not the system that we have set up. Our system of justice is you win on evidence that is reliable. These vocational experts, I had an ALJ say to me, the ALJ, counsel is confused. The ALJ is not a statistician. It's like, exactly. The vocational expert's not a statistician. And I'm not either, but the data speaks for itself. I mean, those of us that did civil litigation, it's like, well, what does Exhibit 1 say? Well, Exhibit 1 speaks for itself. Fair enough. Exhibit 1 does speak for itself. The ORS speaks for itself. The ONET speaks for itself. The OOH speaks for itself. The OES speaks for itself. It doesn't need me. It just needs to be there. And that's what notice is. Notice is presentation. Just present it. Just throw it in there.
Great. Well, we have no further questions and we're out of time. But Larry, great presentation. Thank you so much for doing this.
Thank you. And use that code training to sign up. You get 15 days. You can take it for a spin, see if you like it, sign up for a month, sign up for a year. If you don't like it, let me know. I'll get you a refund. But you will win cases. You will have a battle on your hand. You may not win immediately, but once you've destroyed the vocational expert enough times, you will win and start winning cases that deserve to be paid. These people cannot engage in SGA, and we need to get them paid. Thank you.